Over a century ago, a small-town loom factory worker made a decision to make a difference. This decision led to the birth of Suzuki, and to this very day, his impact is still felt across the globe. To tell the story of Suzuki Motorcycles, we have to start from its humble beginnings. We have to tell the story of the looms, the inspiration to diversify, the war, then the very first bikes. We've got to tell the tale of the struggles of a man who wanted so much more, and how he achieved this feat through perseverance, persistence, and hard work. To tell this story, we have to start with the man who started it all, Michio Suzuki. Suzuki was born in the year 1887 to a family of farmers and cotton weavers in a small village situated at the Shizuoka prefecture in Japan. From the young age of 8, Suzuki had begun working on the cotton fields, and it was expected that he'd grow up to become a cotton farmer. However, when he turned 14, he decided to enroll as an apprentice of the town's carpenter. The apprenticeship was to last 7 years, but the Russo-Japanese War started in 1904, and the demand for skilled craftsmen seriously depreciated. So Suzuki's boss had to take on the work of maintaining the looms on a factory floor, which meant his apprentice had to do the same. Although others grumbled at the thought of working in the factory, Suzuki cherished it, as it later provided inspiration for his innovations. When his apprenticeship ended in 1908, he took control of his family's silkworm farm and turned it into a loom manufacturing workshop. His time working at the loom factory, coupled with his carpentry skills, gave him insight as to what people needed. So he created a pedal-driven loom, which he gave to his mother, who used it to weave cloth a lot faster than she had with her hand loom. Unsurprisingly, word spread about Suzuki's revolutionary invention, and everyone wanted one. This led to the birth of Suzuki Loom Manufacturing Company in 1909. Over the next few decades, Suzuki's company thrived, majorly because he incorporated the advice of the weavers who used his loom into his inventions. In 1920, the company went public and became extremely famous a decade later with the production of a punch card loom. The company exported its products across Asia, and things were going great. However, in 1933, everything came crumbling. Suzuki's success was majorly due to its international trade, but in 1933, Japan seceded from the League of Nations, meaning they cut ties from those who they used to trade with. The export market shrank, and Suzuki had to begin searching for ways to diversify and create products that would still be wanted by all. His thoughts went to automobiles. In 1936, Suzuki recruited people who could bring his dream to life, and in 1937, the project began. Initially, production was hectic, as there were several rejections and failures, but 2 years after the project began, the company completed several compact prototype cars. These first Suzuki motor vehicles were powered by the then groundbreaking liquid-cooled 4-stroke 4-cylinder engine. This engine produced 13 horsepower, 9.7 kilowatts, from a displacement of less than 800 cc. It also had a cast aluminum gearbox and crankcase. The successful production of this vehicle had Suzuki dreaming of churning out vehicles in no time, but World War II came and all the plans came to a halt. The government had declared civilian passenger cars a non-essential commodity, and despite the protest of Suzuki and other Japanese automobile companies like Honda, everything was put on hold. Suzuki struggled this period as neither of their business was thriving, but the war ended and things began to take shape again. After the war ended, Suzuki pushed aside their automobile dreams and went back to producing looms. Things got a lot better when the US government approved the shipping of cotton to Japan. Every domestic textile manufacturer wanted a loom, and Suzuki was ready to give them the best. Unfortunately, this joy was short-lived as the cotton market collapsed in 1951. What use were looms if there was no cotton to weave? Every attempt to sell this equipment was met with a major block, and Suzuki knew he had to do something to keep his company afloat. He revived the motor vehicle production wing of his company. Initially, his thought was to make adjustments to the vehicles that were produced in 1937, but after a quick survey, he noticed that wasn't what was making waves in the country. Rather, Bicycles with gas-powered engines was everyone's desire. After the war, the Japanese were in search of an affordable and reliable means of personal transportation. A number of companies were already producing clip-on gas-powered engines that could be attached to a regular bicycle, and Suzuki decided it was the way to go. In 1952, the Suzuki Power Free was born. The Power Free was designed to be inexpensive, simple to erect, and easy to maintain. It came with a 36cc, 1 horsepower two-stroke engine. It was so widely accepted that the next year, the ever-innovative Suzuki added a double-sprocket gear system to the motorcycle, upgraded the engine to a 60cc two-stroke engine, and the Diamond Free came to life. The double sprocket allowed riders to either pedal without the engine assist, pedal with the engine assist, or not pedal at all, and run completely on engine power alone. This innovation earned Suzuki a patent and a financial subsidy from the Patent Office of the Japanese government to continue research in motorcycle engineering. The Suzuki motorcycles were superstars, and by 1954, the company was producing 6,000 motorcycles per month. That year, the name of the company also got swapped to something more befitting, Suzuki Motor Company Limited. That was the beginning of Suzuki's path to gaining a strong hold in the automotive world. That same year, the Khalida CO was introduced to the market. Khalida, which is the Japanese word for "this is it," was the first true motorcycle produced by Suzuki. This bike combined a single-cylinder 90cc four-stroke engine with a stamped channel frame. Its engine bore a flywheel magnet, which came with a never-before-seen automatic spark advance that could control the ignition timing. The engine was paired with the first rotary 3-speed transmission used on a motorcycle. It was also the first motorcycle in Japan to feature a speedometer. Sales of the already produced models continued, and in 1958, Suzuki adopted the now-used S emblem. It was only right they had a corporate logo, as their dream to manufacture several motorcycles was already actualizing. The next year, the Khalida SEL Twin was released. This model featured the world's first two-stroke, two-cylinder engine in the 125cc class. The use of the twin-cylinder engine allowed it to reach higher RPMs and compression, which resulted in an incredible advance in performance. This engine was paired with a rotary 4-speed transmission that pushed it to generate a maximum horsepower of 10 PS and reach an impressive speed of 110 kilometers per hour. But there was more. This bike featured an electric starter, a telescopic front suspension which looked like a bottom link suspension from the exterior, and it had the jet-line styling that flows from the headlight to the fuel tank and toolbox. The SB version of this incredible bike was the forerunner of subsequent Suzuki Sport models. Suzuki was planning to release some new models when the assembly plant was destroyed by Typhoon Vera in 1959. This was a huge stumbling block for the company, as it amounted to a huge loss. But as always, the company picked itself up, and by March 1960, a new modern assembly line plant was opened. Forging ahead, as always, Suzuki entered a motorcycle race team into Grand Prix under the manufacturing name Khalida, and the racers were able to emerge as the 15th, 16th, and 18th at the Isle of Man TT races. That was an impressive start, but that wasn't the goal. So the next year, 1961, the company upgraded their motorcycles and entered into the Grand Prix under the Suzuki name. This time around, their most impressive result was a 10th and 12th in 250cc Isle of Man TT races. If the team had given up in their quest to emerge victorious that year, it would have been too bad, because 1962 was the racing team's time to shine. The inaugural season of 50cc Grand Prix motorcycle racing was in 1962, and it was at this race Suzuki had copped its first win. There had been an intense three-way battle between Suzuki, Honda, and Kreidler, and Ernst Degner had ridden to victory atop Suzuki's RM62 machine. The next year, 1963, Suzuki repeated this feat, only that they added a manufacturer's championship and a win in the 125cc class to their portfolio. With incredible performances both on and off the racing grid, Suzuki knew it was time to spread its tentacles across the globe, and its first stop was the American motorcycle market. Americans were crazy about motorcycles, so there was no better place to start. And as soon as the subsidiary company called the U.S. Suzuki Motor Corporation was opened in Los Angeles, work began in earnest to satisfy their American customers. In 1965, the T20 was introduced. The T20 was introduced as the fastest 250cc motorcycle in the world, and it was aimed at the U.S. market, but its features were so incredible that it gained worldwide attention. The 247cc powered bike came with a 6-speed transmission, a twin leading shoe 8-inch front brake that actually worked, a 12-volt electrics, quick action throttle, Posi-Force lubrication, twin 24mm carburetors, among other mouthwatering features. It's no wonder it sold more than 5,000 units per month. The bike was simply sensational. Suzuki bikes were making waves, and there was a need for other assembly plants, and in 1967, its first motorcycle plant outside Japan was built. The plant was built in Thailand, creating Thai Suzuki Motor Company Limited, and the company continued to achieve great feats. That same year, the Suzuki motorcycle race team won the World Grand Prix, and they might have kept winning if they didn't have to withdraw from the competition in 1968 due to unsuitable changes made to the rules guiding the races. 1968 also saw the introduction of the T500 motorcycle. The T500, popularly known as Suzuki Cobra, was a beast on the road. It was a much larger version of the T20, so you can guess how incredible it was. Powered by a 492cc, a two-stroke, twin-cylinder engine, it quickly gained a reputation for reliability. This bike could reach a top speed of 105 miles per hour and produce a horsepower of 47 bhp, 35 kilowatts. To top it off, the chassis was so durable that many considered it bulletproof. This bike was only produced from 1968 to 1975, but over 100,000 units of the model were still sold. The 1970s were a great time for the company. In 1970, Joel Robert won the 250cc World Motocross Championship for Suzuki, beginning a 3-year streak of victory. The next year, the GT 750 was launched. This bike was a huge surprise as it featured a 2-stroke, 3-cylinder liquid-cooled engine. It was quite advanced and was the inspiration behind a line of smaller, air-cooled, 3-cylinder bikes. However, the 2 strokes on the bike limited its use as street motorcycles. This is because these sorts of bikes were known to pollute the environment. That was a little setback, quite alright, but it wasn't enough to dampen the morale of the engineers at Suzuki, as the TM400A motocrosser, the bike designed purposely for 500cc motocross races, was released. This bike was so incredible that the popular racer, Roger DeCoster, won the 500cc World Championship atop this bike 5 years in a row, from 1971 to 1976. In 1972, the street version of the TM400, popularly known as the Hustler, was released. This bike was structured to thrive beautifully on both city streets and off-road. It was equipped with a 400cc 2-stroke 1-cylinder engine that came with an easy-to-use primary kickstarter and a decompression release mechanism. For stable ignition performance at all times, the bike was fitted with a pointless electronic ignition system. Its Seriani-type front forks also allowed it to have excellent riding stability. After the success of the Hustler, the company was ready to release another masterpiece. However, the model turned out to be a disappointment. In 1974, the RE5 was introduced to the market. It was the first Japanese motorcycle with a rotary engine, and everyone expected the best, but it was a commercial disaster. Those that had been quick to get one were thoroughly disappointed, and the bad reviews kept increasing. This was a heartbreaking time for engineers at Suzuki, because the bike had cost a fortune to develop. They tried to make some changes to it, but the result wasn't any different. In the end, the company abandoned the project. Some even say that the company was so heartbroken by the result that they dumped the tooling into the sea so that they'd never be reminded of the failure. However, Suzuki never stays down, no matter how many times they fall. The next year, the production version of the racing machine, the RA75, was produced. The RM125 came with an air-cooled, two-stroke single-cylinder 123cc engine. Due to its racing ancestry, the bike performed quite well. The company would have continued production way beyond 2008 if there hadn't been a decrease in demand for two-stroke motocross bikes. In 1976, the GS Series motorcycles were released. Before the GS Series, Suzuki had almost exclusively manufactured two-stroke machines, but the GS Series came to change that, as they were four-stroke machines. Some of the first models were the GS 750 and GS 400. However, in 1978, the GS 1000E became the series' flagship model. Suzuki had stunned everyone when they introduced their first 1000cc motorcycle in the Paris Motorcycle Show in 1977. Everyone agreed it was a stunner and couldn't wait for the production model to be released. When it was finally done, the likes of Kawasaki and Honda, who had previously released their 1000cc models, had come to take notes. The GS 1000's design was inspired by the successful GS 750, which was the lightest of the 750s in existence at the time. Although the GS 1000 was slightly heavier than its predecessor, it was lighter than others, which had previously dominated the market. Engineers at Suzuki had skillfully extended the stroke of the GS 750 engine from 56.4 mm to 70 mm, and the cylinder was enlarged from 748cc to 997cc. This redesigned engine yielded a maximum power output of 90 horsepower. And the bike was Suzuki's first leader bike. Overall, the bike was so impressive, its contemporaries didn't stand a chance. Suzuki ended the decade on a good note, with motorcycle racer Wes Cooley winning the AMA Superbike Championship on the new GS. There's no better proof of the bike's superlative nature than this. He also did the same in 1980. In 1980, the GSX 750E was introduced, and it featured a DOHC engine upgraded to 4 valves and adopted the twin-swirl combustion chamber structure. Also, the front suspension got a new anti-nosedive fork system. 1981 came with the introduction of the RG Gamma. This bike was created purposefully to compete in races, and its 500cc two-stroke engine gave it the power to produce 95 horsepower. And that was enough to make Suzuki win both the manufacturer's and championship title that season. Also that year, the German designer Hans A. Muth came up with an incredible design to imitate that of the samurai sword to create the GSX 1100S katana. Although its radical design made critics worried that it wouldn't appeal to the masses, the katana was so widely received that it was sold from 1981 to 2019. Whatever it might have lacked in physical appearance, it more than made up for it speed-wise. Suzuki claimed that this street motorcycle was the fastest mass-production motorcycle in the world, and when it was put to the test, it reached a top speed of 237 km per hour. Well ahead of the Kawasaki GPZ 1100 that came second with a speed of 225 km per hour. In 1983, Suzuki released its first ever full-blown race replica, the RG250. One of the remarkable features of this bike was its large power-to-weight ratio. With its two-cylinder parallel, water-cooled 250cc two-stroke engine, it was able to produce up to 45 bhp at 8,500 rpm and 38.4 Newton-meters of torque at 8,000 rpm, with its weight amounting to roughly 130 kilograms. It was also the first mass-produced bike to have a lightweight aluminum frame and aerodynamic fairing similar to that of racers. It also got a very advanced full-floater suspension system and the really cherished anti-dive front suspensions. This bike was revolutionary, and it amounted to incredible sales. The following year, the GSX R50 motorcycle with an oil-cooled 4-cylinder DOHC engine was introduced. It was great, but it was nothing compared to the GSX R1100 that was introduced in America 2 years later. But before that, the RG500 Gamma was introduced in 1985. This Gamma was fitted with the same square four-cylinder layout as the Grand Prix bikes. It also got other racy features like the square tube aluminum frame and the removable cassette-type transmission. Racy features were great, but the GSX R1100 was even more impressive. There was a decline in the motorcycle industry in the mid-1980s because Honda and Yamaha had gone head-to-head in churning out motorcycles in a bid to earn the title of the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer. But instead of earning a crown, they only caused the market to break down, as there was an oversupply. Several new bikes went unsold and began collecting dust in warehouses and dealers' floors. Then Suzuki came and intended to change the narrative. The introduction of the RG250 pushed Suzuki to become a serious contender in the best automobile manufacturer race. But the engineers were not satisfied. They knew they could do more. The GSX R50 was an indication that they were on the right path, but it still wasn't enough. They wanted a very lightweight, high-performance bike. The designers set to work reducing and reconstructing the frames of previously existing models. In the end, they came up with a new design, now popularly known as the humpback frame. The structure of this frame features a distinctive shape, with square tubes extending back over and around the top of the engine, then turning sharply down just below the carburetors to underneath the engine, where they meet the lower tubes. Besides the humpback frame, a game-changing suspension was designed to further save weight, and it was successful. For the engine, a DOHC 4-valve per cylinder design was used. However, it came with unique features that made it stand out from other air-cooled designs used at the same time. In the end, the GSX R750 was born, and when it was successful, the engineers mirrored its technology, adding more bore power, and the GSX R1100 came to light. The 90s started with a name change. The company became the Suzuki Motor Corporation. 9cc DR Big was introduced to the market. Like most Suzukis, it was incredible, but what really made it stand out was its engine size. DR Big has the largest single-cylinder engine in living memory. Fast forward to 1995, the much-revered Bandit 1200 appeared in the market. This bike was an upgrade of the GSF 600 Bandit, which made waves in the middleweight motorcycle class. The 1200 Bandit featured a 16-valve, 1156cc air oil-cooled engine that unloaded so much power that many bike lovers bought it multiple times. In fact, clubs made up of die-hard Bandit lovers sprung up all over the globe. Riding on this wave of success, the TL1000S was released in 1997. This bike was the first Suzuki sport bike with a V-twin engine. A year later, a racier R version was released. It came with a dubious rotary vane dampening system in the rear shock. The company also added a steering damper on the TL1000R, but it didn't do the trick. The flaws in the bike didn't make it a commercial success, but in 1999, the Great Hayabusa was released. Upon the release of the Hayabusa, Suzuki revealed that it was the ultimate aerodynamic sport bike. Powered by a 1298cc liquid-cooled DOHC inline four-cylinder engine, the Hayabusa became the dream bike of many land speed racers. This bike was so fast that its name Hayabusa, which stands for the Peregrine Falcon, was befitting. The initial model could reach a top speed of 312 km per hour, and subsequent models are still in this range. The fact that the Hayabusa didn't compromise other qualities like handling, fuel economy, reliability, comfort, noise, or price made it more endearing. In a review about the bike, a critic wrote, "Speed is not all the Hayabusa is," and he couldn't be more right. 2005 was the year Suzuki's original four-stroke motocrosser, the RMZ 450, was released. It came equipped with a four-stroke 449cc engine, which featured the Suzuki Advanced Sump system. This is a kind of lubrication system where the crankcase consists of a dry and a wet part. The gearbox operates in the wet half, while the crankshaft runs in the dry half. This system was designed to hang the engine low in the frame and still have some ground clearance. So, the system, coupled with other incredible features, made the bike highly competitive. In 2006, the Boulevard Intruder M109R, Suzuki's flagship V-twin cruiser, was wheeled out of the factories. It was powered by a 1783cc V-twin engine, combined with a 5-speed transmission. This power cruiser came with the world's largest pistons, and its performance, whether on low speeds or high, was top-notch. More recent models of this bike are still in existence, and it remains a must-have. In 2008, the B-King was launched. This bike was powered by the same engine in the Hayabusa, so you know it was a big player in the speed and power department. The model was Suzuki's flagship big, naked bike, and it performed way better than its contemporaries in the same class. In 2010, Suzuki suffered a little setback financially due to the economic downturn. So, to cut costs, the company didn't import any sport bikes to America for the 2010 model year. But in 2011, things began to pick up again. In 2014, the V-Strom 1000 ABS joined the Suzuki family. This bike, which is powered by a 996cc motor that could yield a total horsepower of up to 99.2 at 8,000 RPM, was the first bike by the Japanese company to have a traction control system. The modern controls featured less kickback, which helped riders stabilize their vehicle. In 2016, a more improved version of the GSX R1000 was introduced to the market. Suzuki made some reconstructions that seriously improved the performance of the bike. Currently, more recent models like the Gixxer 250, Bergman Street, and SV 650 are making waves in the market. The company is one of the top-ranking manufacturers of motorcycles in the world. Some rank it 4th, as some believe it's in 7th place. Regardless, being in the top 10 is an incredible feat. And all it took for such a great company to be born was the dream of a small-town loom manufacturer. So, what do you think of Suzuki motorcycles? Do you own any, or do you plan to get one? Which of them is your favorite? Kindly let us know in the comment section. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You could also turn on your notifications to be the first to know when we release other amazing content. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.